South Africans will be taking place from around 7 o'clock. We'll take you live to that. Lots of news in the interim. And let's start with this. The IMF says South Africa needs to deal with Eskom. The international lending body issued a strong warning this week after visiting South Africa. It says Eskom remains a risk to the country's economy. And while some progress has been made in unbundling Eskom, this will require legislative action and a decision on how to address Eskom's unsustainable debt. Independent producers are currently allowed to offer energy into the grid, but many have argued that their involvement has not ramped up quickly enough. Eskom has been the dominant supplier of energy, but it's been unable to meet demand and keep the lights on all the time. The law will allow for the creation of a transmission system that will provide for an open market that will allow for a competitive platform. And those legislative changes the President did say would be going ahead in his State of the Nation address. To discuss, we're joined by MD of energy company Rubk, that's Ruse Moleshe. Thank you for being with us, Ms. Moleshe. The IMF released this warning. At the same time, the President said something is being done to allow for a separate transmission entity within Eskom. Firstly, can you explain to what extent that will help alleviate Eskom's problems?
Eskom's problems are numerous. They not only relate to the transmission system, they are related to the generation infrastructure, which is aging and unreliable. Also, the new infrastructure still has to be fixed. Defects have to be fixed on that. So there's a lot of more problems on the operational side, as well as on the financial side. Eskom, as we all know, is struggling to get revenues from municipalities and other sources, and also has a huge unsustainable debt that they are finding it difficult to service. They're getting government support just to be able to do that.
Tell us about the debt levels, and IMF picked up on that again. We've heard it, it's a common refrain. The problem being that Eskom cannot grow and think about the future and fix itself when it's burdened with this incredible debt. It's repaying historic debt and the interest on that. There's been lots of debates previously, possibly getting the PIC involved or government taking over that debt. Do you believe something has to happen soon? Is Eskom being hamstrung by that debt? Is that one of the fundamental problems?
Correct. The debt that Eskom has is not sustainable. And just to be able to do that, they're getting funding from National Treasury. I think 2019, 2021, it was over 59 billion, if I'm not mistaken. They continually, every year, are bringing something above 40 billion that they're providing to Eskom, and that's envisaged to continue until 2024. This is just only to service the debt. Then there's also operational issues that Eskom needs to deal with, which they have to do that through the tariff they get from NERSA. We know that their expectations of that are relatively high, and it's likely that they may not get all that they are looking for. That means that Eskom as an entity is reliance of South Africans on Eskom as an entity is becoming untenable. Probably South Africa has to look at the private sector to try and relieve the pressure, because even if the debt goes to government still has to spend on the fiscus on other critical matters like education, health, and other aspects. So it is better to relieve Eskom. I think the President mentioned that there's 4,000 megawatts of capacity that is required. Eskom will not be able to build that in the near term, not even in the near future. So something has to be done outside of the Eskom system to try and address the challenges.
All right, and there is a plan on the table. The President has often said we're not privatizing Eskom, but to unleash the power of private players. Let's look at the three parts of this, starting with generation, which is the coal power stations that Eskom already has. But the idea there, just correct me if I'm wrong, is to get a lot more players generating power into the grid. And it's taking place, but so slowly. Why?
is taking place relatively slowly. I mean, the IPPs have to go through the process of procurement by the IPP office to get their power and buying from Eskom. It takes a while to get those projects into the system based on the fact that they have to apply for funding, have to prepare and all of that. Also, private sector entities now are allowed to build their own generation, which is going to be critical for Eskom as a transmission company to provide the enabling infrastructure for them to be able to wield the power to the system. So all of these things are in place. Government is trying, but it's going to take a while.
And then transmission sits between generation and delivery, and these legislative changes that the President was talking about is all about transmission. You mentioned Eskom will have a transmission company. Then there's talk of an independent state-owned transmission company. Will that be one and the same thing, or competing entities, and what will it exactly do?
Okay, currently Eskom has got 3 divisions, if I can put it that way. It's the generation, transmission and distribution. So generation will remain. The transmission company will be ring-fenced and into a new entity, still belonging to Eskom Group, that will be enabled to build infrastructure, transmission infrastructure to enable others to connect. So that will be trying to divorce the generation capacity, which Eskom is part of, competing with independent power producers and other private power sectors, whilst Eskom is both a player and a referee. So that's why transmission should now be outside of that, to be able to at least have some independence.
And the transmission company will then take energy from Eskom or the independent producers or whoever, as long as they've got a good price. So it becomes extremely competitive.
That is their aim eventually, yes, to make sure that you get capacity from competing generators, including Eskom's capacity.
They're talking about being on track to get this unbundling done by the end of this year. It's a promise from a way back when State of the Nation address. Do you think it's going to happen? Are you seeing the political will there?
I think that it is going to happen because Eskom has been, has already done the staff separation, has done most of the internal divisional separation, and also they've been going to the market looking for board members to serve within that entity. So it is on the cards, and I think it will happen. Whether the timelines are completely correct, that's another question.
Are you feeling a little bit confident after SONA finally?
Yes, I am confident that there is no other way. The transmission division has to be separated.
All right. So the President saying the legislative changes will happen. That's going for public comment, I understand, soon. That was the MD of energy company Rubk, Ruse Moleshe. Thank you for your time. Let's take a short break.